Welcome to today's ETL Mastermind, Attracting and Working with Strategics with Carlos Gamez from Thomson Reuters. We're going to be recording this, so if you have any colleagues or anyone else who would like to be able to access it after today's broadcast, shoot me an email and I will send you the link. You should be seeing my screen, and I'm just going to go over some housekeeping. If you've never used GoToWebinar, I'm sure most of us have, though. Here's a screenshot of the example of your attendee interface, and you should see something like this on your own computer. You're listening in with your computer speaker system by default, but you can also join by the phone by selecting phone call in the audio pane, and the dial-in information will be displayed. And you'll have the opportunity to send me questions, but I'm going to be unmuting everybody so that you can also participate just by saying something. But if for some reason we're not responding, or you've self-muted, you're going to have to go back in and turn off the mute. You can also submit questions in the question panel, and we'll also open it up at the end of the pre-populated questions. And thanks to everybody who sent some questions to me ahead of time, and we'll open it up at the end of the broadcast for just a regular open discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our expert, Carlos Gamez. Carlos is the Senior Director of Innovation for Thomson Reuters Legal Business, and in this role, he partners with different people inside and outside of the enterprise to define the innovation strategy and to execute innovation goals through strategic projects with the potential to drive organic growth. The projects he works on include running ideation and innovation campaigns and challenges, defining and funding collaborative research opportunities, advising on and performing proof of concepts, and developing and leveraging relationships for co-creation with customers and industry partners. Carlos joined TR under its leadership development program, where he performed roles across strategy and product strategy. And after the program, he served as the Chief of Staff to the General Counsel and as the lead for legal department operations. Later, he was also part of the Corporate Development Group, where he led the evaluation and execution of acquisitions of companies. Prior to joining Thomson Reuters, he worked with startups in different capacities in Silicon Valley, and he's also practiced IP law in one of Mexico's leading law firms. So welcome, Carlos. So glad to have you here on the call with us. Carlos is also on the advisory council to Evolve the Law and has been a great friend to us. So I am thrilled to get this going here. So as I mentioned, we did field questions up front, so we're going to go through those, and feel free to chime in if you have any follow-ups or need some clarification. So let's get going. So the first question, Carlos, is it ever too early to seek a strategic partnership, and at what stage are you looking at partnering with a startup? I can't hear you, Carlos. Are you on mute? Huh. That is odd. Hold on. Yeah, it looks like, okay, there we go.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Yeah. So everyone was unmuted, and then I was muted. I guess that's what happened. Okay. Thank you so much, Deb, for the intro, and I'll go ahead and answer the questions. But first of all, I wanted to just make a quick clarification or announcement. Because this is really intended to be more of an office hours sort of conversation. If feel free to ask questions, or if I'm not addressing the question in the right way, or you want me to clarify, I'd be happy to have a conversation around it. So we can use this hour as the people on the phone and online want to use the hour. So we can keep it flexible. As Deb mentioned, she did get several questions from you in advance, so I'm going to try to address the questions. But again, we can have a conversation around it. Does that work, Deb?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So the first question I got was, is it ever too early to seek a strategic partnership, and what stage do I the Thomson Reuters and look at partnering with a startup. And I guess this applies to many of the large publisher information technology companies in the legal space. But I would say it's not a question of being too early to seek a strategic partnership. We do have multiple engagement models depending on the level of maturity of the company. But I think it's more about having a strategic angle and having something that is attractive to the company, and it's all about alignment, right? So to the extent that you are able to identify an opportunity where it makes sense for a company like ours to partner with you, if you're a CEO of a startup, a legal technology startup, or just any other company, then the important thing here is to find the angle and define the value proposition. So to give you a sense of what a partnership could look like with us, we can do anything from making investments through an emerging technology fund that we have to incubating companies. We have an incubator in Bar, Switzerland, but we're also accepting virtual incubes, and we have a couple of companies there. And we're also doing joint development of concepts with other startups. In addition to this, we have kind of full-blown partnerships with some other startups and companies. So it really is a matter of identifying what the value is and identifying the right person within the company, usually someone like me, to help champion the conversation. Hopefully that answers the question, and we can go to the next one, or I can further clarify.
Yeah. And we talked about when do you start looking at them? Okay.
Yeah. So it really doesn't matter, because it's going to depend on the type of engagement that you're looking for, right? So in some cases, if we want to make an investment with a startup, it actually makes sense to approach us very early on, because we can bring a lot more to the table than just funding, and providing strategic direction and helping shape the roadmap of the startup. So in other cases, if really what you're looking to do is more of a channel partnership, or where we are going to market together or responding to requests for proposals together for certain clients, it makes sense to be a little bit more mature and advanced and have a proper revenue generating business, so that we can minimize the risk in going together. So it really depends on kind of what the joint proposition is.
Great.
But it's never too early. I mean, if you have the right angle.
Okay. So next question is, how do you learn about potential strategic partners?
Through organizations like Evolve the Law, and there is, we as Thomson Reuters, we are involved in a lot of industry events and forums. We sponsor the Codex Center in Stanford. We're just about to announce another sponsorship with Duke Law Tech Lab. We engage with multiple startup network communities. So it does help if you are actively involved in the community and the ecosystem. But that said, we do have from time to time startups that just reach out directly. I would say though that if when that happens, and it's not us actively seeking or kind of haphazardly engaging in a conversation where we can brainstorm and iterate a little bit of how we could work together. If it's a direct outreach, if you're not able to find the right angle, you almost burn a bridge, because it's harder to further the conversation or take another meeting, a follow-up meeting, if the initial conversation wasn't as successful.
Got it. Okay. Next question. So how much and what must you have in common to be the right strategic partner? And if you have a great deal in common, how do you determine that you're partners and not competitors?
That's a great question. I mean, the easiest way to determine that you're a partner and not a competitor is if you're playing in an adjacency, right? So if you look at kind of the product suite that a company like Thomson Reuters has, or some of our competitors, I mean, if you're able to map yourself in a gap where there's not a direct offering, but you're essentially selling to the same customer segments, it's more likely that you're the right fit for a strategic partnership. If you're essentially replicating some of the products that we have, or are creating a substitute product for some of the offerings that we have, then the question is really more around, how, what is the joint proposition. So if it's not going to be on the product side, is it that you are in a different geography where we can go to market together, or are you looking for us to be an acquirer of your company, and is that the angle that you should be pursuing? So it's always easier if you're operating in the adjacent space, but that doesn't mean that if you're a direct competitor, that if you have something to offer, again, it's all about what's the right angle and your approach. If you have something to offer, you can always start that conversation, and we can determine together whether it makes sense to continue the conversation or not.
Great. So, what KPIs, trends, or other metrics are important when you're evaluating whether you want to work with an earlier stage company?
So for us, and this is going to vary company to company, for us it's really about strategic alignment and fit. So because, at least in my role, the main metric for me is learning and organizational learning. As long as we are trying to further some of the priorities that we have lined up in terms of our product roadmap or areas that we want to explore, it's never a loss. So I think the most important KPI, at least for me, is alignment, right? So are we working or are we discussing a collaboration in an area where we know we want to make investments? Because eventually, whether we learn from the collaboration or whether we identify a joint opportunity, we know that we can act on it because there's already a prioritization process that took place where we know that there's investment behind that. So that alignment piece, I think, is the most important. I mean, there are a lot of startups out there that are doing very interesting things, but if we haven't had that internal discussion at a company level, that's an area that we want to prioritize to focus on, it's just an uphill battle. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't consider raising or having conversation around what we should be doing in that space, but it's just earlier on.
Got it. Okay, next question. What value do you look for in strategic partnerships with startups? Is it mostly optimizing business efficiency, boosting brand marketing, or spurring internal innovation and growth?
All of the above, really. There's, I guess the probably the one that is less important here is business efficiency and optimizing business efficiency, because actually working with a startup for a large corporation is quite disruptive. We have, we have the express mandate to try to work with startups and with third parties because it helps bring external market knowledge into the company, and it also helps us be more agile. So we do get some of that, but at the end of the day, once we determine that we want to pursue a certain product direction, we need to put in our existing processes. So it's actually disruptive from an efficiency standpoint working with a startup, because we basically need to redo and what we did and plug it back into our internal operating models. From a boosting and brand or PR, I think it's huge just because it positions us as someone that's looking externally, and also it helps us get to markets where in some cases where we're not really playing, if we partner with the right startup that is pretty active or well known in a certain space. And spurring internal innovation and growth, I mean, that's really the main driver, right? It is about, all these partnerships are really about identifying opportunities that we wouldn't be able to pursue on our own, and where collaborating with a third party is really an avenue for us to accelerate some of our revenue targets.
So I've actually got my own question, which I didn't put into the deck, Carlos. So from a timing perspective, from introduction to you've got something going, how long do these take? And is there a standard or a range?
No, it depends. It really depends on the type of collaboration, right? So obviously, it's always easier to go incremental, right? Because it depends on what you understand as partnership. I'm including here some minority investments that we've made recently, but essentially the higher the commitment, obviously the higher the process, and there's more involvement from our legal teams. If you're looking at product integrations or even joint product development, it's an even greater time frame. And we tend to do these projects that require us to form a longer term commitment, which starts a little bit more mature, because first of all, we want to make sure that they have some traction. We do have, as any large company, we do have procurement processes, master service agreements, and certain conditions that need to be met before we get to that stage. So it's always easier, right, to spin up something quickly in the form of a proof of concept or something similar, so that we don't have to go through all these hurdles. And once we validated that there's a path to success where we can get fully behind it, then it makes sense to take our time and go through the process.
Great. Okay, so next question. So how do you create buy-in from strategic partners without creating a burden or extra work for them? This is more from the company perspective, right? Companies don't want to be taking advantage of, and they still want to make the most of the relationship.
I think, and I just had a conversation with one startup this morning, and it's all about that being incremental, right, and generating trust as you go along. Once you work with certain companies, they learn to trust you just because you work together, and it just flows more naturally and easily. But when you're still at that stage where you haven't really worked together, it does help to have a joint vision of where you want to be, but take it step by step and do it in a way that's low risk for everyone, just to make sure that one thing that you do want to avoid in working with startups is large company, and it's just obviously there's a spectrum, right? So you can as a large company, you can pay a third party, a startup or a development team or someone to do a work for hire, where essentially it's your IP and they're just developing something for you, and we do that all the time. That's not really what we consider a partnership. Then on the other side, you have what is more of a partnership in the product side, which is kind of like a joint development. And I think getting from one side of the spectrum to the other incrementally is important, and having the option to for the startup to always walk away if you feel that kind of the direction of the project is deviating too much from your roadmap is very important, right? So all these projects for a large company are, I would say, non-urgent. That's these are things where that there's very limited investment behind them. It's primarily about learning. So the fact that if a startup walks away or says, it's no longer working for me, it's not going to damage the relationship. It's actually something that is well seen. So you always need to keep that option open. But at the same time, though, it behooves the startup to kind of make sure that if there's alignment, if the joint project is something that aligns with your roadmap and where you want to be, that you push it forward, because sometimes because they're lower priority for a large company, other things might it might take the backseat to other priorities or other projects.
Got it. So how then do you measure the success of the strategic partnership? And is it related to knowledge gained or revenue growth, or is there some other metric that you're looking for?
Right. From my perspective on innovation projects, it is really more about the knowledge gain, and about that, it allows us to form a better view as to what we want to do next. If we can get to that stage quickly, so it is about how fast we can get to a point where we know enough about the relationship that we can make a determination on next steps. That really is the measure of success, right? So it's the quality of the learning and the speed of the learning, and then from there, right, when you are in a position where you can make an investment, partner, make an acquisition, right? Because we do that as well. Then it really is all about the revenue growth and being able to deliver on projections and synergies. So these are hard targets.
Great. Okay, so next question. Do you like to invest in companies you partner with, or are you looking for channel partnerships?
We do both.
Okay.
Yeah, revenue sharing opportunities, we don't do that as much, just because a lot of times the level of oversight required for some of these opportunities is more distracting for a large company like ours. It has to be a significant opportunity for us to really look at that as a viable option. I mean, we've tried that before, but what ends up happening is, in relation to other revenue streams that we have, it's tiny, and it gets underinvested. So that model is not necessarily the first one that we go to. Sometimes it's just easier to pay a licensing fee for a product that, for example, in the case of a product integration, and do that, or in other instances, it's easier for us to do referral fees. For example, if we're working with a startup and they are, passing on leads for new clients for us.
Got it. So, are there any particular subject areas where you look to early stage companies to augment what you currently have?
Yeah, absolutely. There's obviously there's your typical buzzwords, right? Blockchain, AI, big data, analytics, all that. I mean, there's we have expertise in certain areas, but once you get to some granular levels, we do acknowledge that there are companies that's all they do. So we definitely look at. I'll give you an example, right? We recently announced a partnership with Brevia, a company that does contract text extraction. We have a managed services part of the business that part of the services they deliver is contract review and document review, right? And so this is an area where they have an adjacent technology that is very complementary to the service that we render. But in addition to that, because we are such a large corporation with R&D, with R&D functions and scientists behind this, we're able to actually stretch the technology a little bit more, or run experiments and jointly with the startup, right? And that's the type of that's the type of engagement where we feel this is really augmenting internal expertise, right? Because we are learning how to apply a certain technology. We're learning about limitations, but also we're learning how to solve those limitations by bringing in other people from our company to help.
So we already touched on this already in terms of the incubator program that you've got. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, check it out. It's just do a Google search, or if not, I can send you the link afterwards. Thomson Reuters Incubator. It is based in Switzerland. However, we are accepting companies virtually, and I think there's a lot of value in this. We have one company in particular that we're working on with right now called Claros. They're essentially doing online dispute resolution on the blockchain, and they're again very early stage. They're at the prototype. They just they did their staged ICO, or they're staging their ICO. They just did their first round, and a lot of what we bring to the table is just helping them validate some use cases that they've identified. And we have a lot of experts that are able to provide feedback around arbitration, their business model, et cetera. So we do that as well. So what we gain out of this is there is a large community of people within Thomson Reuters that are experts in things like arbitration, but are not experts in blockchain and blockchain applications. So we've been having a lot of conversations. We had one this morning where this startup presented at an internal blockchain conference, and it's a two-way. It's really beneficial for them because they're leveraging our expertise, our networks, and it's beneficial for us because we're really learning about the space and how some of these startups operate. So if you have something where you feel that you're working on a startup where that's not just kind of a good opportunity from a business perspective, but that you're doing something very innovative where a company like ours and our employees could learn from you and from the space that you're operating in, then definitely you might be a good fit for the incubator. So the incubator is really all about learning, and our goal there is really to help this startup be successful. So we'll do whatever it takes to help the startup be successful.
Fantastic. So this, I believe, is the last. Yeah, this is the last one. So what would you say are the pros and the cons of engaging in discussions with large companies?
So pros are definitely if you have the right proposition and if you're talking to the right people in a large company, then you're basically augmenting the strength and the capabilities of your company. You have access to funding, you have access to talent, you have access to customer channels. The cons are obviously that with scale, you're also going to get a lot of the bureaucracy hurdles, slow time to decisions. So it does help to have the discussions with the right people that can accelerate some of these things, but sometimes these are just things that you will have no control over. So the biggest con, I think, is getting too distracted and too bogged down by that partnership, that you're not really focused on delivering your roadmap, and you're burning cash without kind of delivering on some of the metrics and benchmarks that you've set for yourself in advance. So I would say be careful with that, because if alignment is really important. If you're moving in the direction that you would want to move as a startup anyway, then you can get a lot of scale and investment and access to channels through a partnership. But if you're really deviating from your objective by engaging with a large company, unless there is an acquisition in sight, I'd say you have to prioritize.
And are you looking for exclusivity in these, or not necessarily?
Not really. I mean, not at the level of actually not at any level. I don't think we've done any partnership or deal, at least in recent memory, with a startup where we've done something exclusively.
So, guys,
a lot of times, it actually helps, because whatever we do together, they can actually replicate with some of our competitors, and vice versa.
Great. So I'm going to open it up, guys. If anybody has any questions, I've been asking a lot of questions to Carlos here. Now's your moment. So if you want the attention of somebody who can possibly help you out, speak up now. Hey, Will.
Yeah, I'll bite. This is Will Norton from Simply Agree. Thanks, Carlos, for talking. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
So you talked a lot about alignment, and to a certain degree, I think a lot of that's on the startup to kind of figure out where to find alignment and looking for opportunities. I'm particularly interested if TR has tasked you with specific subject areas where you should be going out and looking for companies to learn from. I mean, I assume the buzzwords you used are like some of the areas, blockchain and AI and analytics. But are there any other specifics or thoughts you could give about areas where TR might not currently have any products, but is really sort of actively looking for opportunities to grow?
I think that's a great question. Well, it's really more focused on capabilities versus product. So as a startup, the way that you look at a segment is really, you're basically delivering on a solution on a very specific pain point, and the narrower the solution, then the better for you, because you're able to generate revenue faster. In our case, when you're looking at a big company like ours, it's more about identifying a segment or a workflow or a process, and then identifying which of our products or capabilities can cover certain gaps, and then mapping out some gaps. And it's really a harder conversation to have just openly, because obviously we're not going to advertise like, we have a big gap here, but we are actively looking. We might have, for example, some products that cover 30% of a capability, and we may and that's good enough for going to market, but we're always looking to augment that. So that might be a focus point. And in other cases, there might be certain technologies that, even though we want to invest in them, we know that we're not going to make an investment to develop that particular capability until like 3 or 4 years from now. That's going to be too late. So part of my role is to try to accelerate that by finding someone that has already developed that, and trying to come up with a solution that's lower cost and faster to market. So it really is, conversations are important, and having them two ways, because sometimes you can't really advertise this is exactly what we're looking for, but you're always probing. So the trust factor in conversation, and that's why these communities mean so much for us, because you can have very, very candid conversations, and you'll stumble upon opportunities that way. So I do have a list of priorities, for instance, and I know certain areas where we want to focus on more. But it's not a map necessarily, right? And then on the other side, once we start having a more serious conversation around focus areas, we do sign mutual NDAs, and we do get into, kind of a more ring-fest environment to have more in-depth conversations, especially when we're sharing about what we're working on. I mean, as you know, for instance, we just launched the analytics research product, or revamp Westlaw Edge last week. Now that product, that was in the making for about over 2 years. We had over 70 research scientists. These are people with PhDs working on it. You had multiple editors and attorneys, developing question answer sets. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes, and you can't really talk about what you're working on. But if you identify a startup that may have something that could be complementary to that, early on, sometimes we want to start having conversations. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, that's great. I know you can't reveal too much about your internal strategy, but it's helpful just to be thinking about how we can approach conversations and figure out whether there are alignments there.
Obviously, the more you know about our products, the better, right? So if for instance you're in a certain space, like contract review or contract analysis or something, and exactly what we do in terms of services, in terms of our software, and if you've actually used it and you can identify gaps, it's always easier to have that conversation, because you can actually point out opportunities. So when you do that, it's an easy conversation starter for us, right? Because then I'll give you an example, right? So we just recently, we're exploring, how do we organize, what's the opportunity for Contract Express in this case, and blockchain, and we asked a startup, help us paint the vision, like how would you integrate? Here's our API, and here's some information about the product. How would you introduce a blockchain element to this, right? And they gave us a really good answer through a demo. right? So they prototype something quickly and did a demo. So we're always open to have those conversations, and it's always easier to have it that way, where you as a startup are showing us this is what it could look like, and then we take that conversation from there and just make it exponential.
And as a follow-up to that, if you do see an opportunity, what are some of the things you're looking for in sort of the due diligence and vetting process that tell you, I guess it depends on what you're trying to get out of it, but if it's an opportunity or a segment and it's a product that fits adjacent to yours, what do you look for from the product? Do you go to customer references, et cetera? Are there metrics that you're looking for in terms of the, size of the company and, assurances that they're going to be around for a few years? What are some of the things that you're looking at?
It depends on the level of commitment, right, and the level of risk. So I used to be part of the corporate development group where we were actually acquiring companies, and the due diligence process for an acquisition is very tight, because you're looking at you're looking at synergies, you're actually quantifying them, you're looking at integration work, aligning with your technology stack, all these things, Salesforce alignment, all these things, and obviously if you're going through an acquisition, that it's a very stringent due diligence process. Now we've recently done a couple of investments on startups, minority seed stage investments, where we're not really asking for anything. It's more about just having a relationship, and I can tell the technology due diligence that we do is very light. Essentially, we bring in some experts, look at the technology, ask them questions. In one meeting, they're able to directionally assess whether there's something there, and that's good enough for that level of investment. So I think it's all going to be very dependent on the level of commingling and our level of involvement. So also, if there are, if you're looking at systems integration between our product and your product, then we need to bring our sourcing team on board, because we do have certain requirements, privacy, cybersecurity, et cetera, that need to be considered, and standards that need to be met.
And then I might have one more follow-up on that too.
Absolutely.
Of the companies
Well.
sorry to dominate all the questions. For companies that come through the incubator, are most of those opportunities for you all? Are you considering an investment opportunity when you bring them through the incubator, or are a good portion of those just kind of learning and kind of seeing what's out there and what technologies look like?
That's a good question. I mean, we haven't most of the companies that are part of the incubator are from our finance and risk side of the business, and their rationale might be a little bit different. We have at this stage one company from kind of the legal tech, one legal tech company in there. And it really is more about learning for us, because actually they're not really looking for funding. They just did an ICO, and they got enough ether through that. So it really is more about kind of us helping them find product market fit, and then helping us understand the space better. Now that doesn't mean that we wouldn't necessarily invest in a more traditional startup that is going through the incubation process. But really, the way I would look at incubation, investment, and partnership is really it really is a process, right? Where incubation is really about learning, introducing a certain technology or a very disruptive company to our employee base, and trying to identify what can we do together. A seed investment is really more about, okay, we want to have some skin in the game, and make sure that that we always have a seat at the table, and an option to whenever they're talking to a competitor, that we at least have some sort of opportunity to do the same thing. So that's how it's really, you're buying an option. And when you get to we're going to work on a joint project together, joint development, product integration. That's a more bespoke partnership, and there really the level of complexity in that relationship is going to be determined by the level of integration and the level of investment.
Great, thank you. I'll stop talking now, Deb.
No, no,
Oh,
no.
absolutely.
It's great that you're there. I'm appreciating it. Anybody else have any questions for Carlos? Yes? No?
Okay. Is this helpful? Like, what are you? I mean, I guess I'll turn it over to on the phone. I mean, what were you expecting to get out of this call? And have I answered the questions and kind of are you getting what you were expecting, or is there anything else I can do to help out?
Hey Carlos, it's Karosh from Ping.
Hey, Crush, how's it going?
Hey, doing well, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say really appreciate you hosting this conference call, and uh, I think for a lot of startups, it's hard to know how to engage larger companies and companies that have been in the legal space for a long time, and you're really helping shed light on that. So it's super helpful. Appreciate it.
But thanks so much for that. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, this is Will again. I would say from the little I've read from Paul Graham and others who talk about partnering with larger companies, that I think general startup best practices don't even try it. So it's helpful to think about sort of where it might make sense, because from our company's point of view, I think, and for a lot of early stage companies, it's all about focus on your business and making sure you're, getting product market fit, figuring out how to scale, figuring out all of the things that you need to do as a startup, and don't let yourself get distracted by the white whale that looks like it might be a good opportunity, but might be more than you bargained for. So yeah, it's good to have these things in mind so we can sort of have an eye out. But I would say for our company especially, it's more just kind of learning what we should be looking for if there might be opportunities in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great point, and I think in addition, I mean, you have to have a strategy. Like, don't go into a conversation with a large company without a strategy. I think that's what I would say. I mean, a lot of times, obviously you get approached because you have customer channels. Any revenue for you, just from a funding perspective, and also just from a cash flow perspective, is important. Even if it's minimal for a company of our size. So I understand, like, I worked in startups before, and you get excited about a deal that you did with a large company. You can advertise it. You can, it leads to more business, to more visibility, PR, all that, and that's something that is definitely valuable. But I would say, don't pursue a partnership for the wrong reasons, because it is very distracting. It will burn your runway, and from a timing perspective, it really is about fit. So even if you're working on something that is very interesting and very aligned to the company, if the company is not ready to be fully behind it because it's not on the roadmap, or and sometimes it's really questions and issues that are not really visible to you, looking outside from the outside in. So I would say have a strategy, and then also find a person. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that's me, but there's a version of me in any company. Try to find the right person that can help you champion your idea, because that person is also going to say, you know what, this is the right time, and you want to get that answer as fast as you can.
I would also just add to that one of the advantages of being a member of this group is that you can also ping out to one another, because you're all at different stages, and you may have experience that you could share with one another. So, don't forget that this is a resource as well. Anybody else want to weigh in here?
I would double down on what Deb said, and ask around. Obviously, you're all, not all of you, but some of you might be competitors, but you can always talk about process and engagement models of different companies, and your experience about engaging with a certain company, and what worked, what didn't work. So I would encourage people to, if you identify someone that has worked with us, ask around, and then the flip side of that, provide feedback to the company as well in terms of what worked well for others, because sometimes because of the level of relationship that we have with some companies, they're not going to necessarily provide that feedback directly, but we are trying to improve, especially companies like ours that have the mandate to go out and look for third parties to work with. I mean, like we want to develop that capability of being a good partner, which is not always something that we do well or consistently across all different segments.
And we're also going to be rolling out on the EPL side. We're rolling out a listserv for executives of the companies so that you all can create your own subgroups within and ask questions and share your experience. So look out for that. It's going to come out next week, actually. So I just want to, if no one else has any other questions, I just want to thank you, Carlos. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how should they contact you?
Email is fine. I mean, I really appreciate you. I mean, this is obviously a long time for you to spend on video, phone, and you have other things to do. So I really appreciate you being here. If anyone here on the call wants to get in touch with me, just send me an email, and I'll respond.
Yeah, and I can forward it on as well. So you know how to reach me at dtesser@breakingmedia.com. And thanks for tuning in. Our next one, we're going to take August off, but our next one will be on Wednesday, September 12th, which is the ABCs of Raising Capital with Jules Miller, Yaron Plink, and Mike Sushland. And if you're going to be at ILTACon next month, we're doing an event there, so look out for that. Trivia with Ellie and Joe Patrice from Above the Law. And thanks again, guys. I'm going to be recording this, and shoot me an email if you want to see the recording.
Thanks, Ed. Oh, just one more thing I would mention, and this has happened. Like, feel free to leverage me for anything. If you need a second opinion on something, or just want to bounce around an idea, I'm happy to do that. I'll just give you an example. There's a company that we made an investment in, and they were racing around. And they asked me, can you talk to this other potential investor? I was happy to do that too. So it really is, this is a community, and feel free to, treat me as part of your community. I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, get back to work. Have a good day.
All right. See you.
Bye.
Thank
you. Bye-bye.